Today we're gonna make, you guessed it, a leather guitar strap. I'm Jeff, you're watching Home Built Workshop. For quite a while now, I've been wanting to make my own guitar strap. I've got a whole bunch of different ones that I've purchased, but they're just not quite as cool as a handmade one. So I thought today would be a perfect day to break out the leather tools and let's see if we can make a guitar strap. Now I took a few minutes and looked over the different guitar straps that I own, and this one in particular is kind of one that I like the shape and the feel of. So I'm gonna pull this thing apart and we're gonna use this as our template to make our new strap. So we've got our two pieces here, and really I'm just gonna sort of replicate this. Now this one in particular is layered up. It's got a accent color on one side and a bunch of stitching. I don't have a leather sewing machine, so trying to do this sort of thing would take a really long time trying to sew it by hand. So for now, I am basically going to replicate this strap. We're just going to use a single thicker piece of leather. I found this piece. If I use my little handy leather measuring gauge, this looks like it's about a 9-10 ounce leather. Nice and thick. I think it's actually thicker than even the original guitar strap. Yeah, it is. So it's gonna be nice and heavy duty. Now there's a couple of marks and things on here, some wrinkles down here at the end. It's not the greatest piece of leather if I was gonna try to do a big project, but right around in this portion, it's fairly clear, and I think we can cut some straps out of there to make our own strap. See what I did there? Cut some straps, make some straps. Ah. If I take this existing guitar strap and I lay it along this straight edge, it kind of hangs off the edge, so that's not gonna work. So I need to determine a spot where I can trim a nice straight edge at a little bit of an angle so that I know this strap will fit. If I measure this original strap, it's 2 inches wide. And while I'm at it, I'll measure the wide portion of this shorter strap, and the wide piece is also 2 inches wide. So we need to cut two straps that are 2 inches wide. To cut the 2-inch wide straps, I'm just going to use my strap cutter set to 2 inch. A strap cutter is an awesome tool for making straps of really basically any length. They're really simple, just has a thumb locking wheel here, and there's a little blade, a little razor blade that goes in here, and you just adjust this to whatever width. Mine in particular has a scale on there. I usually double check that with a ruler. Set that to your desired width. Now apparently I forgot to hit the record button when I actually cut the straps, but you didn't really miss anything too exciting. The straight edge that I just cut rides along this side of the tool, and the blade just cuts a nice strap. Let's get back to it. With my new straps cut to 2 inches wide, I'll take the existing strap and lay it on top of my new strap, and I'll use that as my template to trace out the shape of the ends, as well as mark out the locations for the holes where you can adjust the length. I'm going to omit a couple of these holes because I don't ever use my strap that short. This narrower strap is 7/8 inches wide. That's also conveniently the size of these holes here. So I need to make sure that I don't go over 7/8 of an inch when I'm trimming this down. I'm gonna lay some painter's tape on the second strap. That way I can mark out a center line and measure my 7/8 width off of the center line. That way I'll be able to keep everything centered. With the center line established, now I can mark out my 7/8 inch wide strap along that center line, and then we'll just trace this end on here and we're ready to cut. I don't want to just trace this on there, although it would probably work okay. I want to try to make this as straight and as neat as possible. That's why I'm marking it out on this painter's tape rather than just tracing this. But if you want to try tracing one, there's no reason you can't. I just want to make sure I keep it nice and straight. Now I'll just trace out the end of this strap we got a rough pattern ready to cut. And there's our two main pieces. Now I need to create these slotted holes which allow you to somewhat adjust the size of this strap. Now there's a couple different ways you could do that. You could cut these out purely by hand by using a small hole punch on either end and connecting the dots. I'm going to use a 7/8 slot cutter that I bought about 2 years ago for this particular project. See what I mean? I've been wanting to do this for a while. I have used this since then on other projects, but this is the project that I purchased this particular punch for. After cutting the 7/8 slots, I'll use a round punch and punch the hole for the strap button. Now we need to address these ends, finish getting them shaped. Since they're both the same, I'm just going to fold this thing over and we'll head over to the belt grinder, sand it nice and smooth. Now this shorter strap doesn't really fit in the slots that it needs to very well. It's a little bit thick, so I'm going to use a skiving tool and remove a little bit of thickness from this leather. What a mess. But I think that's going to work good. And now for the most satisfying part. I'm going to use my trusty beveling tool and bevel all the edges of the leather. To burnish those freshly beveled edges, I'm going to dampen the edge slightly with a little bit of warm water. Then using a burnisher mounted in my drill press, I'll just put a nice burnished edge onto the leather. This makes it nice and smooth, gives it a little bit of a shine, and sort of seals up the ends of the leather. Having a drill mounted burnisher is absolutely not necessary. You can use a simple and inexpensive hand slicker to burnish the edges and achieve exactly the same results. The only real advantage that I found to the drill burnisher is that it's just a little bit faster. I just spilled the water. Well, after cleaning up my mess of spilled water, I finished burnishing the edges of both of these straps. I'm going to set these aside for a little while, just let that water dry. But while that's drying, I think it'd be kind of cool to make some sort of a little emblem or a label. When you're wearing the guitar strap, at least for me, it's going to be this way. Maybe a little Hayley Guitars emblem or something that I can stitch on right here. Since we have a laser engraver now, let's use that to create a little leather tag with the Hayley Guitars logo. I found a piece of leather that's a little bit thinner than the leather I'm using for the guitar strap, and we're going to load that into the laser. I created a file that has both the Hayley Guitars logo as well as an outline for my stitch line and a cut line where I can trim this thing to its final size. I'm not going to cut this out with the laser, although I absolutely could, but I don't want to have the burnt edge that the laser is going to leave on the leather. That inner line that you can see is where I'm going to punch the holes for the stitching. I'm going to bevel the edges, but I'm only going to bevel the top edge of the piece. I want to try to make this sit as flat as possible against the guitar strap. Hopefully this time I don't spill the water. Now before we go ahead and glue and stitch this little tag on there, I decided I'm going to apply a coat of dye to these other pieces. I'm going to do a light brown dye on both of these pieces of the strap. Then once we stitch this tag on there, it's going to have kind of a little bit of a contrast. I think it'll just look cool. Look at that. I didn't forget gloves. As soon as the dye is completely dry, I'm going to lay out where I'm going to attach the leather patch. I'm using a square to make sure I lay it out nice and straight. I don't want to attach it crooked. Now I can add the contact cement to both the strap as well as the patch. And as soon as the glue has tacked up, we'll stick it in place. That's going to look cool. Now we just need to punch and stitch this little thing on so it can't fall off. It's going to be really easy to do since I scored my stitch line right in there. With the piece firmly held in my stitching pony, I'm going to stitch this little patch on. And yes, if you've watched my other leather projects, I am not using red thread here. I'm using brown because it blends a little bit better. At the end of my stitching, I always back stitch one loop and then I tie the thread off using a square knot. After trimming the ends to length, I use a lighter to lightly burn the ends. This helps keep it from fraying and coming undone. That looks cool. Now really, we're in the home stretch. We just need to finish this up. Now since there's dye applied to this, and we're going to be wearing this, we don't want that dye to come off on our clothes. So to seal all that up, I'm going to apply some tan coat, which is kind of a sealer, and it's going to lock in that dye so that it doesn't come off on our shoulder. Well, this is my shoulder, but it would probably be your shoulder because you're probably right-handed. Thumbs up if you're a lefty. One other benefit of tan coat, it smells incredible. It's like wintergreen or something. It smells good. Maybe pine sol. I don't know, but it smells good. So the way you apply this is you apply a coat and it's going to start to get sticky. And then you just kind of use your rag and almost buff it out. Another cool thing about tan coat is that while it will seal in the dye, it will still allow you to go back and re-oil the leather. It doesn't keep the oil out. I don't know how that works, but it's kind of a cool thing. Down here on this little label, I'm going to use a clean rag because I don't know if you can tell that this does pick up a little bit of the dye. I don't want to wipe it on that piece because I want to try to keep as much of that lighter color as I can. Once the tan coat's dry, I'll just wipe on a coat of oil. And like you've seen me use before, I'm just using regular household olive oil. The last step to completing this project is to install the hardware for the shallow strap locks that I'll be using. I like to use strap locks on all of my instruments because I've had straps come loose before, and thankfully they've never hit the floor, but it's been pretty close. The strap locks that I use on all my guitars are these shallow strap locks. This is the newer style, which they're calling the S-locks. These newer style S-locks are pretty cool because instead of a nut that sometimes can come loose, these have a little finger collar that you screw on by hand and then secure with a teeny little set screw. I'll put links in the description if you want to check out these particular strap locks. With the strap locks on, this thing's done. It's ready to be put to use. I've got a guitar that I built a couple years ago actually that's been waiting for a strap. This is going to be perfect on there. Really a cool project, making your own patterns from an existing piece and creating a very cool, custom, handmade leather guitar strap. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought down below. Thanks a lot for watching. That's a wrap.